Hello internet, welcome to my channel. This is just a short video I wanted to go over to just, get people to get to know me as I make my YouTube channel and go over some of the games that I played in 2020. These games really helped me get through this year, and I just wanted to share these games with you. So sit back and relax and enjoy this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe, a lot more to come. Ghost of Tsushima is the first game I wanted to go over and just give some aspects of the game and how it wasn't really my most anticipated game of the year, but it really did win me over as the game of the year for me. First off, for Ghost of Tsushima, I just want to say the game looks amazing. One of the most beautiful games of 2020 by far. You can definitely tell that Sucker Punch put a lot of detail into this game, love and care and passion behind it, trying to get this post-feudal era of Japan down with these Mongols roaming around Tsushima Island, trying to invade while the samurai of the island are trying to defend it. But the samurais quickly realized that the Mongols don't fight the same way they do, with honor and dignity, and that the samurai way may not work this time. Which is something our hero Jin Sakai has to learn, which really helps with the character development of the story of Ghost of Tsushima. One of my favorite things about Ghost of Tsushima's combat was standoffs. There was no better way for me to start off combat in this game, because it was one of the most immersive ways to start. It really felt like I was reenacting one of those scenes in those old samurai movies. This method really helped build resolve, which is one of the main ways Jin tapped into other ability. You can see the resolve building up as I take out each enemy here on the bottom left of the screen. Ghost of Tsushima's open world is one of the most interactive open worlds. Every time you ran into a new town, you never know what you were going to experience. The NPCs of every town would come with a side quest that you never know where it will lead you down. The majority of the time, the side quests do have a big impact on somewhat of the main story. Which really helps with giving that sense of immersion where you feel like you're in a world that's lived in. And I won't go too much into side quests and stories because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. Interacting with the wildlife in Ghost of Tsushima is also very important. Fox dens are like one of the main ones you will interact with. They help with upgrading your ornament capacity by bringing you to these Inori shrines, where you would have to give honor to get that upgrade. There's a lot more about Ghost of Tsushima I want to talk about, which I'll probably cover in more detail in a later video. But for now, this is the end for Jin. Now I'm going to talk about a little game called Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I waited on for 5 years, not including the time frame waiting on an announcement of a remake for about maybe 10 years. Yeah, I think the tech demo was in 2005, so yeah, I waited until 2015 when they announced Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now I feel like telling you guys the story of how I even started liking Final Fantasy VII, which is I didn't even play the original game until like 2013. Yeah, so 2013 I played the original game on my PS Vita. And from there, I definitely became a Final Fantasy VII fan. After that, I just couldn't even wait for the remake. I was like, I want to play this in more modern graphics somehow, some way. So I'm gonna go over Final Fantasy VII. That was one of the other games of last year that I really enjoyed. First thing I will say is the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake is not the same story as Final Fantasy VII PS1 Classic. It is completely different. It ties into a lot of things the same, but when it comes to the characters, the development, a lot of aspects of how, Cloud interacted with most of the members of his party and his team, even people who aren't members of the party, really went very well. What I mean by that is you get a better understanding of Cloud's relationship with Avalanche and understanding between how he's just a merc. He doesn't really want to get too involved with them, and they want to get to know him more and more as the story goes on. Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat has changed completely. No longer turn-based JRPG. It's way more real-time action-based. They did implement a classic mode, which plays on the classic version. It's a real easier mode though, and I kind of like slept through that mode. I wouldn't really recommend playing classic mode unless you want to fall asleep while playing. The gameplay is really linear. You really just stay in Midgard going from story to story. You have side quests here and there, but for the most part it's real linear, point A to point B. Not to say that the story wasn't the best aspect of the game, even though it was very linear. They really got the format down perfectly. One of the main things I liked about Final Fantasy VII Remake was the character development. If you take a character like Jessie, she's not really even that known, or you know of her in the original classic, but you don't really get that much time with her, where she has a whole outlining story in this game. That's really interesting, which really helps out with her character development that really turned into a fan favorite later on. The way I kind of seen the combat for Final Fantasy VII Remake is like a cross between Final Fantasy 15 and 13, due to that stagger system that they had in 13 and just the way the action combat was implemented. It really feels like you're playing Final Fantasy 15 somewhat. But even all that, it still plays like it's a turn-based game in a sense of you still have to do all your special actions through hitting the trigger and then selecting the action you want, which slows down time and allows you to select a party member that has the ability to do either magic or use a skill, or maybe even use a potion or Phoenix down. Overall, I really did enjoy playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. There was a few things that I didn't, agree with when it comes to the development of the game, like the fact that this game is going to be in parts, and the developer still hasn't announced how many parts yet. So we only got episode 1 of the remake story, where in the original classic we got the full story there. Not saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake wasn't a finished game or anything. You got a good amount of story from Final Fantasy VII Remake, about 45 hours plus story. Most of that is due to the aspect of how the story is not really the same story you're getting here. Final Fantasy VII fans are going to definitely love it. So I would say if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII, or if you're just looking for a good action JRPG to play, Final Fantasy VII Remake is definitely your game. And that is my 2 favorite games of 2020. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.